I want to just take a couple minutes to talk to you about your fantasy stories that you've been sending me. And I've been reading through them and a couple of things that I think that everyone needs to work on. First of all, we talked about that your story should have three different things. Remember a plot, so what events are happening in the story, what kinds of things are occurring to the characters. And speaking of that, you also need characters. So I had said that if you want to just have one character, it's totally fine. But some of you have like two, three, four, five characters, and that's fine too. So you have to have some characters. And also, you have to tell me about your setting. So remember, setting is where the story took place. So if it takes place at school or if it takes place somewhere else, you have to make sure that you mention that or you're describing a setting. Something that I've been noticing as students send me their papers is that a lot of you are not putting periods or punctuation in your sentences. So a couple of you sent me, you have a whole page typed out of things that are happening and events, which sound really fun and are great, but it's really hard to understand when there's no period at the end of a complete thought. So if remember I said that your fantasy story, it can start out like a regular day. Like when I showed you my example at school, it started out by just saying, today was the first day of school, or the last day of school, period. So that's the end of a complete thought. And then I went by saying, I was so happy that it was summer break, period. So some of your sentences might be longer, some might be short, but you have to make sure that you're putting periods in between because otherwise it sounds something like this. Today was the last day of the school and I was excited that it was summer and that I was going to do a lot. It rambles on and then it's hard for me to understand. So I want you to go back into your story today and I want you to look at your complete thoughts. So read a little bit of it and put periods. More periods are better than less. Some of you have like a full page typed and there's only two punctuation. Remember, punctuation can be questions, so you can have a question mark at the end. It can be periods or it can be exclamation points. But you have to make sure you're including that throughout your story and not just at the end or not just one or two throughout. Once you have a complete idea, so remember you need a noun and a verb. So what's happening? What's the action? That's the verb. And who is it happening or what is it happening to? That's the noun. So once you have a complete thought, put a period there. It doesn't necessarily mean it's just going to be at the end of a line. It's the end of a complete idea. So when you're telling me a sentence, some of yours have to do with like going outer space or other planets. You would say, then we went to the other planet and I was so excited to be there. Period. Don't just keep putting the word and. A lot of you are, we went to this new planet and I saw a lot of my friends and it's very hard to understand when I'm reading them. So I just wanted to quick come on here and send you this and say, please make sure that you're putting punctuation. Also, the last thing I want to talk about is the events or the plot of your story. Something has to actually happen to the characters, or like think about different scenes that are happening. We've read plays, we've read different types of fictional stories where events are happening. So a lot of you are doing a really good job about talking about your characters and talking about the setting, but you have to make sure things are actually happening in your story, not just that everyone is in one place and you're all just hanging out. Like what happens? Does a fictional animal come and then everyone's confused why it's there? Does something big happen? Remember in mine, the one that I shared with you, and I can reshare it to you if you'd like. I have it on a Google Doc that I can send. Remember mine was everything was normal. It was the last day of school and then it was summer break and then everything all of a sudden turned black. And that's where you kind of got the feeling that, okay, something's not right here, but these are events that are happening. It was school, it was summer, then it got black, and then remember there was a flash of light, and I didn't recognize anybody. So those are different things that are happening. I'm not just saying that all the students were at school, it was the last day, and that's the end of my story. So please make sure you're keeping those things in mind when you type it. You can always send it to me. I know some of you have been sharing your documents with me, but you can send it to me, and then I can take a look at it. I can send it back to you, but please make sure that you have those important things I just talked about when you're doing this. And feel free to watch this video again after you make those corrections to make sure you have those things. Otherwise, I'm just going to say back to you, please look back and add punctuation or events in the story. So make sure you're doing that before you send it. Thank you. If you have any questions, always just send me an email. Thank you.